This podcast is brought to you by Primary Arms. Primary Arms seeks to provide the best shopping experience for everything firearms. With over 13,000 products from over 400 top brands, Primary Arms carries a complete selection of rifles, handguns, firearms parts, shooting gear, apparel, and more. Every order comes with a commitment to superior service, backed by fast shipping and an expert support team. Primary Arms, serving freedom since 2008. Find out more at frn.deals/PA. Welcome to the AR-15 podcast. This show is for you if you just bought your first rifle or if you've been building them for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifles to the next level. My name is Nick Dooley. Hey, and we're joined, as always, by my co-host, Garth Olford.
Boy, do we have an episode tonight.
Yes, we do. Also joining us tonight is, I hate to keep calling him a guest because he's almost becoming a co-host.
Almost.
If we were a show that actually had things together and made theme music for people, you would be getting your own theme probably. We have...
Can't reach copyright infringements, right?
Exactly. We have Pastor Craig with us here tonight. So, guys, tonight we had kind of a fun event/training thing we did tonight that was just the three of us. That wasn't a full-on class, but was definitely not something that a lot of people have ever done.
It was playing around out on the plains at night with wind. December 14th, we're 1 week out from Christmas, playing with guns in the dark.
Yeah, emphasis on the night.
And the dark.
And the dark.
And the night.
Yes. It
with lights. With lights, yes.
It was definitely with the dark. Sing it. Oh,
there we go.
Wait.
So
there we go.
There we go.
Trying something new.
Yeah. So one thing, you'll have to let us know how this audio sounds because we do have a new mic. So for our live viewers, if you want to leave us a comment, let us know if the audio sounds okay. This is something we're going to do every now and then and just have a little bit of live streamy goodness here, but this is more of a roundtable discussion.
Roundtable review.
Yes.
Ooh, I like it.
So
Sitting around a square table, that's weird.
Well, the Knights of the Round Table, it wasn't round.
It wasn't?
No, it was square.
Well, that's dumb.
Yeah. We'll be posting a bunch of pictures and compiling a video on a lot of this for what we determined tonight. And one of the coolest things that we did, I should say the coolest thing, what we did was, guys, we had a night shoot.
Yeah. Garth has a phenomenal range. Lots of steel. We had steel silhouettes out to 50 yards on the pistol side. The rifle side goes out to 350 yards.
Yep.
Which, of course, we certainly could talk about the limitations of where the lighting goes there.
Yep.
And what we learned to notice. But, I think it's, Nick, you guys we can remind the listeners that, you have military experience.
Yes.
You get to train with that type of stuff. Garth and I are on the civilian side of things, that we invest in things. We go by the good faith of what guys like you and others have taught us we should invest in. We too now are instructors with the capability of making wise decisions. But at the end of the day, up in our neck of the woods, you read reviews, you go online, and then you end up dealing with what you pay for. And did it work or didn't it, right?
Yeah, that's 100%. Go to YouTube and hope that the guy you're watching can review it good enough for you to make a determination of should I spend my money or not. Right. And most of the time, it's that's a crapshoot. I'll buy it in hopes that it's not a total failure or it's a piece of junk or whatever. But tonight we got to test the limitations of a few of our optics and flashlights in the dark and the night, and I was pretty surprised with a few of the results we came out with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we get going into that, thanks for the people watching live. I know it's not as good as individual mics, but glad to hear it does sound good.
Yeah.
with that said, tested a variety of lights tonight on both rifles and handguns.
Right.
And some of the results, I think, were not ones people were expecting.
No,
but
myself included.
But one thing about it is, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. It went very much so along with what I have told everyone for a long time.
Yeah,
he's tooting his horn.
He's tooting his horn.
But it's worth it. It's worth the horn to toot.
So when we go through this, the lights that we shot tonight on handguns, I did forget one at home.
But they are all name brand.
Yeah,
they'll recognize all the names.
Yeah, I have one at home that I was going to bring with, but I forgot it because it was in my bedside safe. Well,
you didn't go to bed.
I don't shoot M&Ps that much anymore, so I didn't grab an M&P light.
I didn't know Smith & Wesson still made handguns.
Yeah, they do.
Well, have you seen their new one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a side project. Side story.
Yeah. But anyway, when we went through, so tonight on handgun wise, we had
surefires.
All three of us shoot not M&Ps. We all shoot SIG 320s.
Yeah.
And to that end, Garth, you had an M17 out.
Yep.
Craig, you had your AXG.
I have the AXG Legion. If you ever want to do an episode just on the AXG Legion, it's the AXG Legion.
I had whatever dually custom thing that I
monstrosity.
Yeah, I had
the dually 320.
Yeah,
yeah.
Vince will try and control the bodily noises, and just control the bodily noises, and you'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
But so yes, Jim, you are right. Smith & Wesson does rule the wheel gun world because you start buying at R and stop when you get to S, and that's
okay. To be fair, he is correct. I do have the one wheel gun, and it is a Smith & Wesson. So sorry, I crapped all over him.
I have a pile of M&Ps and used to carry only M&Ps exclusively, and now I've made the switch to.
But a lot of guys used to carry exclusively just Smith & Wesson, and now I don't see a lot of guys except Reed who carries a 40 still because he's.
Well, there's a lot of people who still love the shields.
Well, that's what he carries is the shield.
I competed IDPA when I lived out in the hills on Smith & Wesson E-Series 1911. So throw that in there out there as a complete another thing. But we're talking about lights, right?
Yeah, we're talking about lights.
We're talking about lights.
Sorry. And so we all were shooting 320. The only thing for handguns we shot that wasn't a 320 was my 365.
Right.
Yeah.
And
which brought in another different light.
Yep.
Which compared the full size gun lights.
Mm-hmm. So we had Garth and Craig both had Streamlight TLR 1s.
Yep.
And I had Surefire X300. Now
I think the one thing that was kind of a debate that we didn't really figure out in the dark. You have the original black TLR 1.
Yeah.
I have the Coyote Brown TLR 1 HD or UD, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think they're both 1,000 lumens.
I believe so.
But we'll talk about, I mean, I will say just right out of the gate, we couldn't tell any tangible difference.
No, as far as distance you could see and brightness, I didn't see a difference between your light and my light.
Right.
So I'll start with saying this. I have told everyone that has ever asked me about lights. They ask me, oh, what do you have? What lights? And I'll go through all of the lights I have. And then they'll look at what's on my hip, like in a competition or something. And I would go, I would not, if I was paying with my own money, I would not buy the light I have on this gun.
And that's exactly why I only have one light on pistols and ARs, and it's that light. For that reason, it was between $129 to $150, depending on what website you bought it from.
The handgun light that I steer everyone to is the TLR1. So what's in the glasses is bourbon, because we are done shooting for the night, and
yes.
We're going to have a team drink and
cheers. It's a night
and have a little bit of discussion. But actually, this is 1792, if anyone cares.
Blackened.
Tin cup American whiskey for Craig. But
yeah, and I already
The TLR1 is probably the best value for the money of lights you can get. It is, I will say, like the gold standard. That it's a high lumen, it's 1,000 lumen light, and they are just a ultra solid, great handgun light.
And the controls on it are fantastic, especially for me being a southpaw. And that was one of the things Craig and I noticed right off the bat was he was having issues determining what finger he should run his light with. Whereas when I pull up, I have my free support finger just to reach up and click it, which is fantastic for me. So that's one of the main reasons I really enjoy that light as being a lefty.
Well, yeah. So if we're staying with the handgun conversation, the three main lights we worked with tonight was the Streamlight TLR1. We compared it with we also had the TLR7.
Yep, TLR7
for the subcompact series, which was on your 365.
The TLR7 sub.
Okay. And then we also brought in the proverbial, the king creme de la creme that pretty much every online influencer will run, and pretty much every law enforcement and military agency will also run, the good old Surefires, right?
Yep. Well,
the Surefire 300.
You are seeing a lot of them actually run TLR1s now too.
Okay. Well, maybe it has to do with some of the things that we dealt with tonight, right?
Yep.
So you want me to just jump in?
Let's jump in. So when we go through the TLR, I was just double checking to see what all of our ratings were at. Start with the TLR7, the subcompact light. It's a 500 lumen light.
That was the 500. Okay.
Yep. And then the TLR1 is a 1,000 lumen light. And my Surefire X300 UB, because they're all different because reasons.
Reasons that only Surefire knows.
So those are actually that is either, I don't remember which version of that I have on that handgun because I have two of them. There's a 650 and a 1,000 lumen light.
Okay.
So I think I brought the 650 tonight.
Yep.
Like I do because of performance we have. And when we have the pictures to put up, not as much for like any sort of empirical data because we didn't put photon meters out on targets and stuff like that.
No.
But
you're not going into combat with a photon meter.
But we did have an array of targets set up from what's those closest 10 targets, Garth? 10 yards?
10 yards was the closest, 50 yards was the furthest on the pistol range.
Yep. And then also behind that, there was this really nice old cottonwood tree. So you could look for detail and see the branches and look at all that.
And that's what really kind of became interesting. You know, we actually used that tree, that cottonwood tree, as kind of a delineating piece of judgment for us, simply at being able to pick up the clarity between branches and the trunks of the tree, despite, because your silhouette targets are painted black.
Yep.
Which you would think, oh, wow, we're shooting painted black targets in the night, which, by the way, I mean, it's a very viable factor, right? But so we're shooting with red dots and lights.
For Garth. I was not shooting red dot. I was open sights.
That's right. You were iron sights. So, so we have that on black targets with the lights. What I found to be interesting was we were right off the bat. I looked at you and I said, Dooley, what are you running? And you were checking your light, and it was literally dying. Like the battery life was dying, which, by the way, all batteries die. That's not necessarily a testament to the light, but I felt like it was this. It was going to be a metaphor for the evening, wasn't it?
Yeah. So also, I am obsessive about batteries, and I think I had 12 CR123s on my pack.
Sure, which is good because you needed it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I was like, oh, my light is dead, and we popped that off, and then went, okay, put everything back together.
But those are the things you don't think about sometimes, because heading out to the range, I grabbed my 320 and I grabbed my gun belt, and then halfway to the farm, I realized I don't have a holster that is equipped for a gun and flashlight.
Light bearing.
Yeah.
Right?
It was absolutely pointless to bring the belt along. So
Hey, you know what was the great irony too? So my AR that I brought for rifle testing has the Trijicon MRO, which also has substantial battery life. And guess what? When I was grabbing it tonight, I looked in it and it was blinking at me. I'm like, so every single one of us can speak to the fact that you need to have spare batteries available, right?
yes,
Yeah.
Because you and your light,
I also had spare batteries for.
I had to go put a.
you need a holster that
well,
carries.
no, I needed to go actually put a battery in a AR scope tonight. So
Yep, and I needed to light up that
Yep.
Trijicon.
I carry extra red dot batteries. I carry about 3 different types of red dot batteries, but I know that my range kit is a little different than others because
you got too much shit.
well, that and if I'm teaching a class and somebody's dot dies,
Yep.
I carry a lot of common pistol light batteries.
Yep.
And tools to
probably
change.
because no one checks them. They buy them at the gun shop, and then they wait 5 years, and they come to a class, and we always ask them, when was the last time you shot this or took it out of the box? Oh, when I bought it 3 years ago. So
Right.
Yep.
So
Now, back to lights.
So back to the light.
One of the interesting things that I found. So we talk about lumens a lot, which is lumens measure how bright a light is. And I don't have all of the numbers in front of us to do the super technical. So we're going by the quality of the Mark I eyeball. And the pictures will all be done with, or we're all taken on the Psionics Aurora Black.
Yeah.
I got a screaming deal on one of those recently. So we could start doing this stuff. And in running those those lights, I could not tell the difference between my Surefire X300 for throw and brightness over my TLR7.
A subcompact light.
yeah,
A little guy.
Yeah.
Little guy. That goes in all the little guns.
yes,
Like it is
Versus the Surefire 300, which is
a big monster. Like it is
Right.
bigger than a TLR1.
Yep.
It is heavy, and that one is like I will move it over to that gun is going to be my primary competition gun because it weighs the most.
yeah.
And that's why I have it on there.
Yeah, if you want extra weight for recoil management, it's a great light for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not bashing Surefire either, because when we get to talking about the rifle stuff, I run Surefires on the rifles. But tonight, getting to do some practical real world playing around, I found myself thinking, especially Garth, you and I coming from the civilian world,
Yeah.
where for a lot of people, every dollar counts.
Yep.
Pound for pound, dollar for dollar. It was interesting. So, on those pistol lights, all joking aside, once you put a new battery in your Surefire, I mean, it's up and lit. And then I grabbed my TLR1, lit it up, and instantly that cottonwood tree, it was like, wow, there is definitely a difference here.
No, there was a difference, but the tree was 70 yards away, and every light lit it up to a point where everything was. I mean, most of it was visible to the naked eye. We're not saying that any of these lights were awful by any means. I'd run every one of these lights on any of my guns.
Yeah.
And just for concealed carry purposes, I probably would go with your compact light. I'm not going to be the guy to run a TLR1 on my M7. I'm not going to just conceal carry that gun. That's not going to happen. Right. I don't feel comfortable carrying a gun that large because I'm worried about printing, holster, position, and all those good things. So for that fact, I would, and I feel comfortable running that because even at 50 yards, you were dropping 50-yard shots with your subcompact and not having an issue.
Well, what's interesting, so I guess where I was going with it too is, you're looking at the Surefire 300, that TLR7 for a subcompact. If anyone's wondering, oh my gosh, so do I run a subcompact or compact for concealed carry? There's all the obvious reasons why. And then you find yourself thinking, well, I'm purchasing this little light. What am I going to sacrifice with that little light? I'm flat out saying that little TLR7 compared to the big Surefire X300, no difference.
Yeah.
To my naked eye.
Yeah.
To my naked eye.
I agree with that.
Absolutely no difference. So anyone that's out there wondering, okay, can I comfortably practice and be comfortable and competent with a subcompact with a little tiny light, it will absolutely do the job.
Yeah, and it also that light is right now on the 14th of December 2023. I just looked it up on Amazon. It is $136 on Amazon.
Now, what is that Surefire X300? Even, I mean, granted, that wouldn't go on a subcompact.
$350.
So we're talking about $350 light in performance compared to the
$136.
$136. Pound for pound, dollar for dollar. No difference to my naked eye.
But now the other thing we got to talk about is we were out in the open shooting. But we did go into my old abandoned barn, and we did a wash test to see what the lights would look like in a closed environment.
Right, because I made the comment. I said, guys, especially that HD TLR1 that I have HD, which was definitely a whiter light. Like the TLR7, the Surefire was definitely more of that.
It didn't have the throw. It wasn't a flood.
Right, and it was kind of that, what we would call it, a soft white glow.
Yeah.
Using home lighting comparisons.
Yep. And
versus a more bright white daylight white.
The Surefire that I was running had more of a yellow tint than the Streamlight, the TLR1s all had a
white.
I will call a harsh white light. Like it was
like a modern LED headlight on a vehicle versus the old halogens, right?
Yep.
So I made the comment. I said, the one thing that I'm curious, guys, I said, would it be a hindrance? Because yes, I have at home when everyone's gone, my wife and kids, and everyone's safe. I have walked around the house. We've got mirrors. We've got painted walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that when I kick on the TLR1, it is blinding, almost to a fault. And I did make a comment. I wonder how that would compare to that Surefire 300 or the TLR7. So yeah, we went into that barn where there are walls.
Mm-hmm.
Now
they're dark walls. They're bare wood.
They're bare wood. No paint, no mirrors. But when we went in there, I was pleased to see that the TLR1 still was not overpowering.
Yep.
I mean, it lit the room. It was daytime in there, but it wasn't overpowering with reflection.
So a couple of years ago, I started going through looking at different lights and stuff like that. And there was a theory, and I believe still is, that gets bandied about on the internet about having too powerful of light inside the house.
Yep. And that's what I was
which isn't understandable, because you're like, oh man, it's going to wash everything out and blind me. And then I talked to other instructors and trainers and stuff like that, and they say things like, if I could put the sun on the end of my gun, I would. And
in regards to blinding the heck out of the bad guy.
But it's and then it's, it might wash you out if you walk into this room and you're doing something. Like if you're doing a task and it's too bright over there. And I listened to a guy who went, well, there's an easy way to do that. Point it straight up. And keep your finger off the trigger and point the gun straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Because now what you've done is created a umbrella of light that will cover your whole working area. And it's okay, I have this, we can have it. It's kind of like on my helmet. I have a admin light that I can rotate straight down, but I can also keep it straight up. Because the last time I was playing with night vision, I was in my garage and I went, and I clicked it on to see what it was. So I had that light going straight up to give me that light umbrella.
Sure.
And which we'll get into some of the night vision stuff a little bit later, because also Garth got to play with helmet mounted night vision tonight out in the open for the first time.
Sure.
Yeah, that was fun.
The one thing I would also say, though, that runs the risk, and again, all of these things are subjective. I mean, subjective to, like, Garth, your basement here, you have a long basement.
Yep.
So you would want to take this into factor. For those of us that are running red dots on your pistols, and if you're going to use that as a home defense situation, knowing that you have a TLR1 HD with a lot of light, you actually do have to play around to figure out what level, especially some red dots, like my Leopold Delta Point, doesn't have auto adjust.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use that on your nightstand as a home defense gun, you better figure out how much white light are you projecting and whether or not you're going to be able to see the red dot. Now, if you got all small rooms, small hallways, someone make the argument you're in a CQB situation, screw the red dot, you get the frame on the guy and you're good to go.
Yeah.
In the court of law, that's again, I'm talking pure subjectivity. Yep. But if you have a big house and you're choosing, well, maybe if you're choosing a short barrel rifle or you're choosing a pistol with a red dot, and you've got distance, so you will actually have to aim. You're gonna figure out how much light balance versus red dot if you actually want to see the red dot.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking out loud. Part of what we were talking about with the indoor light versus being outside across the prairie.
Yeah, and you do have more light wash as that comes up, where you have to have a little bit brighter, because we all had to adjust dots.
Yep.
The only dot or optic I didn't have to adjust tonight, like Garth didn't have to on his handgun because he was shooting a iron sights.
Way God intended it.
Right. But like I grabbed my old 10.5-inch AR pistol out, and that has a 2.5 power prism optic on it. And I didn't even fire the light up on it because with the light that it had,
you could see the etched reticle.
I could see the etched reticle just fine and go to work with that 2.5 power.
Right. What would be interesting, kind of just a shout out to one of the newest products for Trijicon, which none of us have the money to have invested in right now, and we aren't sponsored. Not yet on this one. I don't know, duly work on that. But it's the new Trijicon RMR HD, which one of their biggest things they tout is that front-mounted optic lumen detection. They have appropriate title for it. I'm making it up, but it's supposed to.
It's a sensor.
Well, right, but it's front mounted. I mean, my RMR that I have on my daily carry back at home on my X Compact, it does have the self-adjusting, but the emitter or the sensor is not in the front where it should be, based on things like whitewash with the light.
Yep.
That new RMR HD. It would be interesting to see in tonight's scenario how an optic like that would play out in comparison to what we were running.
Yeah, and again, when we're talking about this, I'm going to say we were out in the open, like in the wide open spaces. When you guys were shooting your handguns, did you notice flash?
I didn't notice it when I shot, but stepping back, I was really surprised when you were shooting. I was like, "Man, did you see the muzzle flash on that, Craig?" And I wasn't sure if it was muzzle flash or if it was just smoke coming up
through the light.
Yeah, but it threw me off watching you shoot. But when I was shooting myself, I wasn't really seeing it.
Yep. I think what I always hear debated online, especially with different YouTube channels, gun channels, and influencers, I think it is a very viable argument, truly under night vision. But when it comes to white light shooting, and we were running your 10, even at your 10-yard plates right in front of me. I had absolutely no issue with flash. And by the way, I'm running the AXG with the built-in, what do they call it? Expansion chamber. Let's call it a compensator.
Yeah.
So if there was any handgun that really would have been affected, or that the light and the optic would have been affected by muzzle flash, it would have been mine.
Yep. Well,
not at all.
The one I noticed more flash on was my 365.
But short barrel.
I think that's just because that 365 XL has an obviously shorter barrel, and so it has more unburnt powder out into the world.
And have you noticed the SIG has their special lineup of 365 ammo?
Yes.
Which I think it's actually, I think some people probably consider to be a gimmick. I would say it's because of the short barrel.
Well, SIG has theirs. There's a couple other companies that are making ammunition designed for shorter barrels.
Yep.
And that might be something to alleviate that. I made sure to unload that magazine before we started tonight, so I didn't shoot my Hornady Critical Duty, and that was just some Serbian 124 grain.
So what is the difference? Is it a powder difference then, or
it's a faster burning powder that's supposed to?
Okay.
It's supposed to burn all of its powder up in the short barrel.
Okay.
And that's not actually really new. I remember in my IDPA days, some guys, especially like snub noses and stuff,
would do that.
Especially in the revolver world, that is actually pretty common. But yeah, in the semi-auto, it's kind of it's such a specialty round But I'm kind of surprised it's not marketed more, especially with how common subcompacts are.
I believe the word we use now is niche.
Niche. Yeah.
Niche.
Is Tin Cup as a refill and Tin Cup a niche?
You bet.
So
I'm sorry, thanks, Gar.
as we go through that, so as I know it's hard to picture this without seeing everything, but when we post the pictures up later, make sure you check those out. I'm going to edit our video footage together along with our still photos to get kind of all that together so people can see what it was we were talking about.
Don't upload the one video, my first shot unsuppressed rifle without the hearing protection. It wasn't the most pastoral words, but
Yes.
so guys,
So
me being the new guy with you guys hanging out, like for those who are wondering, what the heck would you? I don't know. Are we allowed to do this? What would you specifically handguns? What would you buy if you had to buy a new light right now based on what we're talking about? I think I know what I would do, but what would you do? What would you buy, or what would you recommend someone who's debating right now on their Christmas list of getting a new light?
I have told everybody that ever asked me this question, I'll first go, okay, you want a light for home defense, you want, whatever you're going to do this. Like, yeah, which light should I get? And they start looking at stuff, and I will tell them, buy a Surefire TLR1. Hands down.
Surefire.
Streamlight. Streamlight TLR, as I was, TLR1 HL, preferably S.
HL, that's what I was talking about, not HD, HL.
Yeah. For high lumen.
Yep.
And the S is just an added bonus because that is
strobe feature.
Strobe.
Which none of us shot tonight, and I have that feature. I just didn't use it.
So I think that's a niche thing.
Well, there is a reason for the strobe.
Yep.
And
home defense.
Well, the area we were at tonight would not be conducive to using the strobe.
Yeah.
It's in a room.
Because it's in a room. It is, with you pointing it, it is disorienting to everybody around us. Think about being at a middle school dance with strobe lights going off.
A rave party on the Army Barracks, right?
Exactly. It's never happened. Okay. Anyway, hands down, Streamlight TLR1. That is, in my humble opinion, the best, and it is the most proven. One of the most proven, because you're going to get, if you want proven lights, you're either going to get the Streamlight or the Surefire.
Right. And both of which have been proven, specifically in law enforcement.
Yeah. And Surefire has had a lot of military contracts. I had a, Surefire light once upon a time. It was on a military rifle and it sucked, but
you digress.
Yeah. It was part of that was small flashlights in the early 2000s just weren't that good.
Right. What about you, Garth? What would you get?
I'm going to agree with Nick on this. Just for the money alone, at $150, you're not going to break the bank on a flashlight. It's reliable. It's durable. The battery life on them is actually pretty phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So for home defense, that's actually what I keep. I keep that gun I took tonight. That is my home defense weapon of choice.
Sure. I would agree. And actually, I had a unique experience. So I've got the SIG XP320 or X Compact. Remember, Dooley, we were at the range that one day, and all of a sudden my back reverse cap snapped.
Yep.
What it was the hinge, the bottom hinge where the battery tray comes up. Now, and here's the kicker. If you have an X Compact, yes, you can fit a TLR1 as long as you use the mounting key. It's actually using the Smith & Wesson mounting key on a SIG X Compact. What it does, though, is you can mount it, but that toggle switch is so close. So what I actually did is I took my Dremel and on the hinge point, kind of ground it down a little bit just to give enough space between the trigger guard on my SIG and that so it could rotate.
I've had that snap as well.
But what happened is that hinge just snapped. And I think it's between recoil, and not just recoil, but holstering.
Yep.
So with that being said, for me, could one make an argument that that's a gripe against the Streamlight in quality? No. I would say I was kind of forcing the opportunity of a product that wasn't really specifically designed on that gun, but I was going to make it work. And in fact, it came from a very, very reputable holster company. I'll just keep their name off just because they gave advice. It wasn't poor advice, but it was advice to get it mounted, but knowing it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah.
With that being said, if I were to get a new light right now for that X Compact, it would be the TLR7, hands down. The only reason why I'm not is because I don't have any holsters. And holsters are about just as expensive as these lights, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this, even after that hinge snapped, I couldn't get the parts just for it that I could find because I also like the little spring thing for the battery had flown. Mm-hmm. With that being said, buying another brand new Streamlight, having an old Streamlight and this brand new one was still coming under cost of a new Surefire.
Yes.
And so for me, that is speaking honest about a product, even having a malfunction of it, and still saying I would recommend the Streamlight.
And also, I know that for guys talking about it, it's like, oh, this is your first time, shooting them at night, because I started talking about this a month and a half, 2 months ago. Maybe we'll go, hey, we should do a night shoot.
Yep.
Like I started getting excited about it. Originally, I wanted to do it next week, only because December 20th is the shortest day of the year.
It was plenty dark when we got there.
And then I think you ran into the pastor's schedule.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just that. It was one of those December 20th is the shortest day of the year. And I had it in my head to do a night shoot on the shortest day of the year.
Yep.
Because
but tonight worked though because we had adequate cloud cover, and so it was dark out.
Yeah.
Other than the farm light,
the moon was very hazy off in the distance, and I don't know what is it, a half crescent moon or whatever.
Yeah. So we had my farm light. We had the neighbors a mile away with their yard lights. Other than that, it was dark out.
Right. I mean, no, there's no street light.
For all intents and purposes, this was far darker than you're going to get in any urban setting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So I think we gave a recommendation what handgun light we'd get.
Now we're going to move on and we're going to start talking about rifle lights.
Right before that, though, Dooley, what I would also recommend is, yes, tonight for you and I, Garth, was our first night of really running the gun from holster to, well, you got to get your weapon holster.
Yep.
But really running a gun under. But I will say this is far from the first time where like I said, I practiced going around my house, manipulating the weapon light, trying to find the right balance of that red dot. Like I said, I've finding the red dot, whitewash. It's important to know.
Thousands of rounds on both of those lights.
Right.
They're like, all the lights mounted. Like I'm not sure how many years has had living on the gun, but like my X300, I've been shooting it that way for 2 or 3 years now.
Well, this was my first time though running a light and shooting it. I've done what Craig's done. I've turned every light off in the house. I've cleared my house, seeing what different reflections would look like and how I would find my sights. But actually experiencing and shooting the gun and being pleased that every time I fired, the light didn't click off was
right. And the steel went ding.
Yeah, it was a great accomplishment.
Yep. So we'll move on to talk a little bit, or not a little bit, but we'll give the same care and thought to rifle lights.
Yeah.
And for rifle lights, we had
we had the O-Light. What was that?
So we had the O-Light Odin.
O-Light Odin. And you had, again, a TLR
on a
mounted on the underside, Picatinny rail.
On the rail of my Keltec bullpup.
And
I had the Surefire Mini Scout on the lock rail at a 1 o'clock position.
Yep, you had the Scout 300.
Yep.
And then I had the Scout 600 DF for dual fuel.
Yep.
And then I also had the Streamlight ProTac HL rail.
Yep. And also I think we should mention we had some fun with mine. I quick detached on my suppressor system. So we ran it with the 3-prong. I run a Silencer Co. We ran the 3-prong flash hider, and then we did a test with that with the light. We even did a little comparison on how much muzzle flash there actually was. And then we also ran it suppressed with the light. And again, that's at the 1 o'clock position. I'm being that specific because I think that plays into a part of our conversation.
Oh, very much so.
Garth, you were running the Streamlight absolutely at the 6 o'clock bottom Picatinny.
Yep.
And that was suppressed, right? Was that suppressed?
It was suppressed.
Okay. And then Dooley, yours were all mounted similar to mine, right? 1 o'clock. And I think you ran all suppressed too, didn't you?
No. So the Surefire 600 was on a suppressed gun.
Right.
The Streamlight was on a 10.5 inch with a linear comp.
Right.
And then the O-Light was mounted on a 6 o'clock with a can.
Right.
On a 9.
Sure.
Okay. PCC.
So tackling this subject, I think when it came to, let's just talk about light output or by the naked eye again.
Yeah, by the Mark 1 eyeball.
Yep, by the Mark 1 eyeball. One thing I noticed, again, light quality, and you, again, the TLR, which I didn't know this. Dooley, you were telling me this on our way back into town, that you can actually get a pressure switch for the TLR series.
Yep, the TLR ones are, they have a remote switch that you can order for them.
Which I would say on a rifle setup, the very first weapon light I ever had was on a 16-inch Daniel Defense, and I also had a TLR, and I had to run it on the right-hand side so that when it gripped. I'm right-handed. My left-hand support hand came up. I could do that. I didn't know about the pressure switch. Maybe they didn't have them at the time, but I was doing that so I could do the toggle switch. It worked. It was fine. That's what you were doing. You didn't have any pressure switches. You were running at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, and again, I was running a bullpup, so I had a shortened area of space to work with.
Right.
And so I had a vertical grip on there, and it was just as simple as moving your right knuckle.
Oh, yeah, with the vertical grip.
Clicking it, and it being just fine.
Sure.
So
I would say light quality, again, the O-Light was great. I will say that TLR, again, even on a rifle, like, because we switched over to your rifle range, which goes out to 350 yards.
Yep.
None of us, me personally, and I have pretty decent vision. I got astigmatism, but I wasn't running any eye correction. And I can tell you, I couldn't see past that. Well, with your TLR, I could see out maybe the 100
I could see out the 200 yards with the light.
But I wouldn't be shooting with it.
No, through the optic, it was maybe 70 yards.
Right. But it was a nice, clear white light again.
It was.
Running my Surefire Scout, I was underimpressed. I could pick up a 50-yard, 10-inch blade at 50 yards, and I could hit it.
Yep.
And that was both suppressed and suppressed. What was really unique, and online, of course, everyone talks about, muzzle shadow, suppressor shadow, barrel shadow. When I ran suppressed, my light is basically back at the base of the suppressor. At a 1 o'clock position on my right side, I could see nothing off to the left.
Yeah,
you stood there and you looked. You're like, wow, that is actually a massive shadow. So I would completely agree with what they say online and got to see it in real world.
Yep.
I mean, I could pick up that 50-yard target, no problem, but basically anything 5 feet to the left and beyond, you could see nothing.
Yep.
If I detached the suppressor and ran just the flash hider, I had no shadow whatsoever, which was good, which is a benefit. But it didn't help me with any distance in my light.
No.
It just it was that side.
It was shadow. The flood.
The flood, right.
Yep. The flood versus the throw.
Yep.
So
that was my observation.
Yep. And the O-Light that we had, like, we're going to do the unpopular thing. And I know that O-Lights have a very bad reputation. They blow up in your pocket. It's you attach a grenade to your gun. The real answer to that is yes, they are Chinese lights, but they imported a bad batch of batteries. And O-Light is the only flashlight I am aware of with a confirmed kill on a user. Straight up, a guy turned an O-Light on and was using it in his mouth, or was using his mouth to hold it.
Oh, no.
And the batteries would get hot and explode because they're all rechargeable. It blew up and killed him because it blew up in his mouth.
Well, that sucks.
Things you don't want on your record.
So a bunch of hate that. There's a whole bunch of shills for Olight and stuff like that. But the Olight Odin is a interesting. I haven't shot with it mounted on a rifle enough to say it's durable enough to stand the test of time.
Well, and I've heard a couple of my buddies very much in the law enforcement world. Those that don't know, I also serve as a law enforcement chaplain for all branches of our law enforcement here. And one of my good friends who's a firearms instructor for Sioux Falls Police Department, his handheld Olights, which he doesn't hold in his mouth, but his handheld he loves. He and I go off-roading and camping, and phenomenal handheld lights. But he has heard that the wood-mounted lights are very questionable. I don't know.
And that's the same thing because of kind of how they're designed. And what this Olight Odin is one of their handheld lights that has
like an adapter, or
it's a built into the housing or to the housing or the barrel. It has a plug that goes up and goes into its pick rail receptor.
Oh.
And then that locks in place.
That's what you were using?
Detach it and move it from one side to the other.
Were you having any issues with your, like, as far as flood and stuff with your light on how you had it mounted on your AR?
So,
shadow? Or
shadow. Oh, the shadow on with my Scout, I did. The other thing I'm going to say is, so the rifle or the AR that I had my Scout mounted to was a 11.5-inch gun with a suppressor and my EOTech. It also has my Sumo Gear PEC 15 on top. So I have a tape switch for the Surefire that has momentary and constant buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have a separate tape switch button.
You got a lot of shit on your radio.
I have a separate button for my laser, depending upon what I have that set up on as IR or visible or IR illuminator. And that can get kind of busy if you don't know what it is.
Well, it goes back to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Practice.
Knowing your weapon.
And that's Craig was shooting it earlier, and he goes, okay, so he grabs it and he's hitting the laser beam. I go, okay, now turn the light on. You go, where's that? I go, okay, go up to 10 o'clock and back 2 inches.
And then I found it. Right. But that's because you practice with it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if anyone's actually adding stuff to their guns, like even something as simple as a light, you got to practice with it.
But Craig, the thing that would have made you shoot just a little bit better with Nick's gun, and I'm just going to throw it out there, is VZ grips. Because VZ grips are great because they're made from a solid block of G10. G10 is amazing because it's durable and doesn't get slippery when covered with mud, blood, or sweat. They have a 17-degree grip angle and come in a wide variety of textures from mild to extreme with 27 color options. They also have 1911 grips, CZ grips, along with SIG and revolver grips. The coupon code for all handgun and rifle grips is AR-15 podcast at VZ Grips.
I think you reminded me of that 3 weeks ago when I was on with you guys. About the same point in the conversation. I love it.
Weird.
Who knew?
Dooley, what I did notice, mounting at the 6 o'clock position, there really was no shadow. And I think the reason, and that was even running suppressed.
Yep.
I think the reason is, though, is because there would have been shadow, but it would have been up in the sky above your line of sight.
Yeah.
So I think there's a benefit to the 6 o'clock mount. Would I practically mount it at 6 o'clock on most things? Probably not, mainly because if I were ever to use that, putting the rifle on a barricade, on a hand stop or something like that, you definitely run the risk of the light. I'm just saying when it comes to light management shadow, that 6 o'clock was very good.
You actually brought up a great point. I've never considered a barricade as a blockade for your light. I've always had, because I use finger stops and grips, so that's usually my point of contact. But
if you're in a high stress situation,
exactly, you're gonna go as soon as the rifle stops. There you are. But that might impede your vision with the light. So
it's just something.
They're all things to think about. So,
but at that 1 o'clock that both you and I duly run our Surefires, that shadow is definitely a very real thing, especially for those who love suppression.
Oh, very much so.
One thing that I also noticed about Olight, though, what was really interesting, I don't know what it was about the Olight, if it's the the light color, which definitely was also a whiter light, more than that yellowish light. It definitely has the most pronounced cone of light.
Yeah.
When you turn that O light shooting down range, it like literally was a legit cone. I don't know. It doesn't necessarily matter. I'm just speaking of observation.
Did anyone have any issues looking through the rifle when their light was on about losing their optic?
Like losing the dot?
Yeah.
No, because I had already preset mine and we checked before we started shooting. So I had taken that into account. Also because of what I've learned just walking around my house, checking those adjustments. But again, if you aren't prepping for that,
that was actually the first thing that happened to me.
You had that happen?
Well, I didn't have a battery in, so I threw it in and then turned it to high volume, basically, and went to shoot. And I was flooded out by my optic and couldn't see any targets. I could see white and green, and that was it.
Yep.
So those are things to consider too. Is if you're going to have a illuminated optic, make sure you have it set because there's a mix and match to get things perfect.
Yep, exactly. It's not a one and done.
No, it is not.
There's a reason why all these high quality companies make adjustments.
Yeah.
But learning how to do them is important. I think most any channel that we also subscribe to and follow. I'm obsessed with YouTube. I'm addicted to YouTube. It's about the only social media platform I'm on ever. Is noticing all of these guys talking about training, practicing for sure.
Yeah, and this is one word. I obviously preach a lot about training and how important it is, not just because I offer it.
I have a listener question there.
Oh, so have you tried Inforce lights? I have one and I like it. It's
definitely a newer one that I've heard about.
I have an original Inforce, the Inforce Alp, and I got that several years ago. I do even have a holster for it because it's for an M&P full-size 9mm with the Inforce Alp. I bought it off eBay for $25.
Wow.
Not the holster. But they had two large paddles that were different instead of the toggles that go up and down you pressed in on. And my light had a problem with draw.
Meaning what?
Catching in holsters and things?
No, not the draw with battery draw.
Oh, gotcha.
Like if I just set the light in the safe, it would go dead in a month.
Really?
Just because it had like a trickle.
So with that being said, Dooley, this is the Inforce I think we're referring to.
That's a different one than what I was.
Right. So I have, what do we call this model?
That's the WML.
So I have there we go. I have the Inforce WML on my SPR setup at home, which is a 16-inch Daniel Defense, Night Force 2-20. I have it on there to have a light on it. I did not bring that tonight to run and gun. I should have because I just told you I put the red dot offset on it. I didn't feel like running and gunning my SPR setup. Next time, maybe we should. But I have the Inforce WML. I have had that light mounted on that gun probably for 8 years with the original battery, with the caveat that I don't run around the house practicing with it. I haven't gone out in the range practicing. I haven't had any draw. It's still the original battery.
This was the pistol light.
Okay.
And it was the original ALP. And I really liked it. Like I loved the form factor of it. I liked the paddles. It had a wicked battery draw.
Yeah.
And
that wouldn't be helpful.
So and I'm told they corrected it on the Gen 2.
Sure.
Because it was kind of a known problem.
Yep. I would be curious, or the listener, which Inforce he's talking about. The WML that
he's talking about the Alp.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. I would say when it comes to light quality, and I did just play with this a couple weeks ago after I put my red dot on again at home. My TLR at home down the hallway compared to the the Inforce WML also down the same hallway. I would say apples to oranges. The Inforce definitely has that kind of lumen power in par with the Surefire versus the TLR.
So
I don't have any reason to take it off. I don't plan on taking it off my rifle.
There is one thing that I'm going to bring up to talk about with cost, because we talked about shadow and placement on rifles.
No.
And so we talk about tape switches.
Yes.
And pressure switches. Surefire does not sell tape switches with their guns. You can buy not their guns, their lights. You can buy the kits that have them included.
Yep.
Streamlight,
which means they cost more.
Yep. So like on my gun, my 11.5-inch gun, that has a $90 tape switch on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the cost of the light.
My Surefire Scout Mini that I put on my SVR I had a really happy wife at that point that let me didn't care about the expense. That was the one and only time I ever bought the top of the line Sure. That's a freaking $500 setup between tape switch, mount, and light. Yeah.
Are you saying she's not happy now?
She doesn't know how much. She doesn't know what it added up to. And that was a few years ago. That was before inflation. But
that was before Bidenomics.
But again, light, mount, and switch, I'm over $500.
Yeah, and I'm going to say
not the highest quality light.
I have an Arisaka Defense mount. I have all that, and now, guys, we didn't have a cloud defense, because I know somebody's going, well, you didn't test, cloud defense is awesome. Or
I got the cloud defense pressure switch mount, way overpriced, but that also was no expense. It was $85 for pressure switch holder.
Yep, and like they might be, I know guys who run them and they love them. Mod Light, meh, only because their company. Like if somebody from Mod Light's listening, like you guys had a really bad spill on social media for a while, and don't throw fits about little things. That's it. I don't like temper tantrums.
You talking about customer service?
I'm just talking about temper tantrums.
All right, then I'm going to ask the question then. Two things. One, what was your favorite out of all the guns we shot for rifle this evening about placement of light? And two, which would be preferable for recommendation to the average listener?
I'll tell you this. I think you're looking for an objective answer to it. I'm going to respond and say, after tonight, I'm not going to change any of my guns.
Okay.
I think where it's mounted, the brand I have and that I've selected on them, it's not because I can't go change it. It's not because even with the budget being tighter these days that I can't afford to go change it. I think for me, what I walked away with tonight is having a realistic check on what it's going to look like, what it can do, and where it's mounted, what I can expect.
Now that's you, but what about?
Yep, that's me personally.
Saying it to the listeners out there, what would you recommend to them?
What I would recommend to the listener is whether it's Olight, whether it's Streamlight, whether it's Surefire, they're all going to be high quality, good quality overall. I mean, we are literally nitpicking the heck out of it.
Oh, we are.
And that was our game plan. Our plan was to let's take these variety that we know that we own.
Yep.
Let's go put it through its paces. Let's see what it looks like. And Dooley, you captured it on film too.
Yep.
I will say, I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed in owning any of those things and mounting them. I'm not disappointed in what I own. I'm not disappointed in the way I have it mounted. But what I will say, what I did learn is now knowing what I have, I do need to practice more so that I know what to realistically expect. If I had nothing and I was going to get something, I would say my judgment would be save some money, go with Streamlight. You're absolutely not going to be, I mean, you're getting high quality, high output. I think maybe the one thing that could be subjective that we absolutely didn't test tonight is longevity and battery life. I don't know, but how many people, civilians specifically, are running around in low light conditions shooting all the time? There's a lot of attorneys attached with all those scenarios, right?
So
granted, it's good to have a light if you're in a self-defense situation.
When you talk about that, this just batteries in the Streamlight that we're running tonight on a rifle have been in that for over a year, and it's been through all sorts of temperatures for ups and downs. And yeah, it's
this is the Streamlight you're talking about.
The Streamlight. The other thing about it is the Streamlight ProTech actually uses the same Surefire Scout mounts. So if you wanted to change up from the mounts they had, you could actually go to using those other mounts.
And it comes with a tape switch.
Yeah, it comes with a tape switch that's both momentary and constant.
And what was the price? Those of you that are shopping for a rifle light, when Dooley told me this, I can attest to the light. The output, the quality was great. That Streamlight, ProTac, or whatever you call it. I mean, when you said the price, my jaw kind of hits. Especially knowing that I've got the $500+ rifle light with, quite frankly, the same setup mounting-wise.
Right now on Amazon, it is $137. And that comes with tape switch, mount, an additional tail cap to do the clicky tail cap.
Oh, an additional.
Yeah.
That gives you a little bit of heartburn. It gives me a little heartburn. But
yeah, so you could go with just the clicky tail cap or that. And John, yes, I am in the military. Also, we're not generally not going to comment on this, but everyone needs to understand weapons manipulation.
Yep.
Anyways, moving on. And using a bunch of these lights, it was definitely putting them all kind of in a head-to-head and then engaging targets with them. We talked about looking out and how far you could see.
Yeah.
That was, very much so. Okay, yep, dialed it down and 50 yards all day long. Ting, 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 ting. Too easy. Then when I switched over and, there we go. James Daniel. The HLX Pro is $101 at Primary Arms currently.
That's the one you're just talking about, the Streamlight? Yeah. Jeez. No, honestly, if I was in the market for another light, if I needed another light, that would be the route I'd go. In fact, I might be tempted to replace the Enforce
with that.
And the reason being is the Enforce, yes, it's super ergonomic where they put the thumb pressure pad and all that. But for me, with an SPR setup, it's mounted on the 9 o'clock position where my thumb actually fits for the ergonomics, but I've got the Harris bipod underneath, which is not conducive. I firmly believe that if you have a rifle setup, you should go with the tape switch. And if I were to do it, maybe after Christmas when we settle some other family priorities, that Streamlight ProTac with the tape switch, I may do. And what I'll do is I'll run that back on that 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock position, even on the SBR with the tape switch. Because then that way I can pull back and not have the bipod in my hand.
Here's one other thing. When we talk about shadow and stuff like that, remember, that's not the end of the world. The other part of running it, where you have that light shadow, especially from suppressor shadow, anytime you're running that, it's going to generally be, you're going to put it on the side that is the same side of the weapon that would be your dominant eye.
Right.
So like a lefty is probably not going to run it on the right-hand side.
And they're going to run at the 11 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
And you'll have it over there. And remember that if you're moving in somewhere where it's, I need to have all this periphery vision over here.
Yep.
If you bring the gun or everything up, you already lose a bunch of that because you're focusing out. So you're picking up all of that other periphery.
Yeah, we're talking semantics when it comes to observations, similar to when we get into semantics of which red dot optic is best for astigmatism, this and that, which you and I have talked about.
Yeah.
But when it comes to truly running and gunning, you're not looking at the dot anyways.
Yeah.
Same thing if you're running and gunning, you're probably not looking at the shadow. If you're looking at the shadow, you're missing the target.
Exactly.
But it's worth noting on it.
It is worth noting, and it's something to look at.
And I know some guys, they'll use those far forward mounts to meet up closer to the end of the suppressor. Here's my one caveat to that. If you're going to always run 100% of the time suppress, kudos, go for it. If you're ever going to take that suppressor off, the one thing I also like about my TLR when it comes to the handgun is it is quite a bit shorter than the Surefire.
Yep.
On my AXG Legion, which is considered a full-size frame. And
if you would look at my lens on my Surefire, the top of it is black.
Exactly. On my X Compact, even the top of my Streamlight is black. But if you match up the right light with the right slide length, Like, I never have to wipe off the lens on my AXG. Don't ever have to. Every single time it's shot, and I've already put a few thousand rounds through it, my lens is crystal clear clean. But anytime you get that light over breaching the muzzle, get ready to start cleaning your light big time. And that's why even if you're going to run suppressor, you're going to run that light way out front.
Now,
you ever unsuppress it, get ready to start cleaning the heck out of it.
Yep. Now, lights are super important. I love having them. You're not going to be shooting 300 yards with a light. Like,
no.
I was shooting 50 yards. I think I shot to 75. There's 75 to 100.
Tonight, you mean?
Yeah, to 100. Yeah. And I think you go 50 to 100.
Yep.
Yeah, because I hit targets at 100. But the targets I hit at 100, I was not using just my sights.
Right. You're playing with lasers.
I was playing with lasers and stuff like that.
And mind you, to the listeners, not trying to sound like we're bragging, we're doing it all standing offhand. We weren't prone and doing any of that. So realistically, if you're in a night situation, especially as a civilian, a self-defense night situation, probably not dropping to prone, this, that, and the other. We were hitting them at 50, but talking about what I would be comfortable with my lighting system, especially even with the rifle, I wouldn't be able to comfortably identify and pull the trigger on anything beyond 50 yards.
No, 50 yards would be about where it's at.
Yep.
And now, when we drop into the world of night vision, and
which that's probably a subject for a whole nother time.
Oh yeah.
But because I know that this was Garth's first time looking at it, but I put my night vision on and was looking at just some of the okay.
Yeah.
Then was sit there, put my IR laser on the target over there, and then look back. Bing!
Yep.
And
we put the goggles on Garth. He just starts walking around the farm.
Yep. That's
So
all I did.
where'd Garth go? He's in night vision La La Land.
I'm just enjoying myself.
Which there is something fun about that. A dear friend of mine, he's got a monocular
PVS
14, white phosphor, all that. It's funny. He always brings it camping, and once the bonfire goes out, here we are still sitting there drinking beer, and I can't see a dang thing. And he's like, "So Craig, how you?" I mean, he's just like he's looking around, walking around with his night vision. I'm like, I gotta go. This just happened in September. I'm like, man, I gotta go pee. He goes, "Oh, my night vision." I'm like, no, I don't need the night vision to go find a tree to pee on. But it was tempting.
So the final things tonight, guys. I think we've really kind of hammered home. We have not maybe entirely ruined a sponsorship opportunity from Surefire if one but
I'm okay with it.
But we got Streamlight.
Yeah, it's very much so in the practical application of what we were doing tonight, and what we were shooting. The Streamlight really you cannot beat. For the pricing component and the real bang for the buck.
Yep. Like I said, I'm not going to get rid of my Surefire. I'm not disappointed in it. Well, I mean, in comparison, I'm not disappointed. It's just clear that when it comes to output, the amount of money I spent, that's probably disappointing. What I'm getting, the amount of money I spent on it was disappointing. But having it still, I'm going to go replace it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My final takeaway is lights are important.
Yeah.
But if you're going to run lights, practice.
Yeah.
You can't just pick it up and expect, like a regular.
No matter how much YouTube you watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And granted, I walked into this, I think I had more night shooting experience than either of you two had.
Yep.
And I've been saying we need to get out and do this because it is a very important thing to do because your gun kind of does weird things in the dark.
Yeah.
And where you're used to, if you think you know your gun, like if you think you really know your system, run it in the dark.
Yeah. Well, and we always stress, in shooting classes, fundamentals. When you're having to unholster, present, gather a sight picture, reach to get your light turned on, you're changing your grip.
Yep.
That changes everything. For all intents and purposes, you're completely slowing everything down. Now, if you want to be able to continue to be as effective as you are in the daytime, even for those of us who have competitively shot and can do it fairly well, if you want to keep that up, you got to practice too. And the other challenge, we're blessed that Garth, your farm allowed us that opportunity. Not everyone can go out and practice in the dark. Most people in the city can't go even to an indoor range and say, "Hey, can you guys shut all the lights off?"
Yep.
But I would encourage, don't let that be an excuse.
Look for training in your area. Look
Seek
for
it out.
ranges in your area. Here's another thing, guys. Airsoft guns. If you get an airsoft analog, you can shoot that in your house, like at a pellet target.
Put a light on it.
Get the analog of your gun in an airsoft gun, and there's ways around it.
Yep.
And it's not exactly the same. I know it doesn't recoil as much. There might not be flash, blah blah blah, whatever. But like I said, there's no training wheels when you're pulling it out. You skin that smoke wagon in the dark.
Well, I especially learned tonight. I mean, all of my concealed carries have a weapon light. And and of course we have the weapon light because we're told that we should. Helps with recoil management, helps identify if you're actually going to actually use it. Yeah.
Oh, we could arrange some guys for force on force, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to kick a couple cups butts. 500 rule.
Should we say goodnight, gentlemen? Should we say goodnight?
Yep. So on that, guys, check out Patriot Patch Company, patriotpatch.co. They do amazing things. And any parting words other than get training and apparently buy streamlights?
Yeah, I'm a pastor, and it's almost Christmas. Get your butts to church. Y'all need the gospel, especially in the times we live in, even in the best of times. Get your butts to church.
All right.
And I didn't ruin your audience.
Oh, we haven't done it ourselves yet. And with that, guys, Garth, you got anything?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you stay safe and stay tuned. Support the people who support the show. Primary Arms, VZ Grips, 4patriots.com, and Patriot Patch Company. Be sure to check us out on social media. AR-15 Podcast 2.0 on Instagram. AR-15 Podcast 2.0 on YouTube. AR-15 Podcast 2 on Twitter. AR-15 Podcast on Facebook and wherever podcasts are found. If you just want to drop us a line, let us know how we're doing, or give us a show idea. Make sure to send that email to AR-15podcast 2.0 @gmail.com.